Welcome back to 100 Hobbies. This week is Expert Week. We're going to interview Hannah out of the United Kingdom. She knows what she's doing and she taught herself how to do it, and she's winning awards along the way. So let's chat with Hannah and learn all the cool things she's taught herself over the past year. So tell me about yourself.
Astrophotography, I didn't really get into it until last year. Like, I was always interested in the night sky, and I remember when Comet Neowise was around and I was kind of like looking for it, and it was always so exciting. I just never knew that you could take pictures of deep space until I saw some Instagram accounts, and I was just like, whoa, what? Like, that is crazy. And I just started off by getting a Sigma 150 to 600mm lens, because I saw one of my friends, Mark, he was taking pictures of the moon, and I was just like really fascinated by how he got such clear photos of the moon. So I got that lens, and then that just led into seeing more astrophotography accounts on Instagram and seeing what people were doing like in their backyard. And one night I just kind of had a few drinks and applied for like quite a big loan, and got the money the next day, and so I got it all, and I've been paying it off. Well, I've paid it off now, but it did take me a year, but I don't regret it at all. It's been amazing. So
you really went all in, it sounds like.
I jumped in the deep end, and I had that steep learning curve, which you kind of just have to overcome. So I have no regrets. I'm glad I went straight into a mono camera, because the quality is I just love it. So yeah.
What's a mono camera?
So it's essentially it's a black and white camera. So the whole of the sensor picks up whatever filter you're putting in front of it. So whether that be red filter, green filter, or blue filter. But what it does is it allows you to use narrowband filters, and then you can really isolate those tiny wavelengths of light. I keep saying wavelengths, it's not called that, I just can't think of what it's called.
I think wavelength is the right terminology for that. Okay. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, okay, cool. But when you can do that, you're eliminating things like light pollution and sometimes moonlight with the sulfur and hydrogen filters. So it's really good in kind of if you're in a city or where there's a bit of light pollution. I do get a bit here, but it's not a load. But I love narrowband. It's amazing. I live in quite a kind of rural area, so the sky is quite dark. So in terms of Bortle scale, you have a Bortle scale of 1 to 9, 9 being really, really heavy light pollution and 1 being really, really dark skies. I live in like a 3.5, 4, so it's quite dark. So when I was younger, I used to be able to see kind of the outline of the Milky Way in the summer. Yeah. And it's kind of, it's always kind of memories that stick with you. And
somebody that just wants to pick up this hobby from scratch and maybe not go spend, a couple $1,000s on it. What kind of recommendations do you have for like the very entry level?
I think the most important thing is to try and make use of what you have, which I know is kind of contradictory of what I've just told you about my story. So many free videos on YouTube as well that will just teach the most beginner kind of person about the basics. Get some free apps, look at the sky, familiarize yourself with the constellations and the way that the night sky changes throughout the year, because it does change. You'll see at the moment Orion's really nice and kind of bright in the sky, and then in a few months it won't be because of just the way that the world turns and everything like that. I mean, I've seen some on Facebook, just some really cheap on the marketplace, or eBay, just a really cheap reflector for like £40 or something. And it's not going to be the best telescope in the world, but it will kind of, if you have a slight interest in it, it will kind of, it might just inspire you a bit, and you can use your phone for photographing the moon and stuff like that. But take some experiments. When I first started, I took over 1,000 pictures, 1 second exposures of Orion and the Orion Nebula, and I'd stacked it. It took 12 hours to stack. This is when I didn't really know what I was doing, and it crashed both times, like lots of 12 hours waiting for this project to stack. And
tell me about like stacking. Like I think stacking is when you take a bunch of photographs of the same thing, but because the sky is moving and you have like limited capabilities with your camera, stacking is when you take a bunch of different images and you use a computer to stack them on top of each other, kind of like Photoshop, and then the computer makes it much more clear. Can you maybe elaborate on what that is?
It basically increases the signal, and the more pictures you stack as well, the less noise you get. So when you're taking long exposures, the sensor can get quite noisy, which is just quite a fuzzy picture. If you're taking, the more you take to a point, then yeah, you'll get less noise.
What are some of your favorite photographs you've taken?
I think it's probably Thor's helmet is one of them, which is funny because it's my, it's probably, with my mono stuff, it's the least integration time in that photo. And I am obsessed with integration time. Like I do 10 hours each narrowband filter minimum. So I was saying earlier, I do about 30 hours. But I think that's probably one of my favorite ones.
You know, at some point, I can tell what like a bad image looks like. I can tell what a good image looks like, but I can't tell the difference between like, say, like a really good image and like a really, really good image. You know,
I think what sets people apart is the first thing is integration time. I think you can't, I think you've got to, especially if you're using mono, you've got to put the hours in to get that data.
What does that mean? Because you keep mentioning imaging. Is that the same thing as stacking, or is that like, is imaging going out and like actually taking the photographs and it just, tell me more about that.
Yeah, so if I was to say like I'm imaging tonight, I mean I'd be out there taking photos. So yeah.
So when you say imaging, it's just like going out in the field and just taking photographs, and the more photographs you take, the better overall stacked photograph you get at the end?
Yeah.
Got it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then there's also things like processing. So processing astrophotos is, like I said, quite difficult, different, and it is quite difficult at first, and you kind of get better and better as you go along.
What recommendations do you have so that when I take a photograph of the moon, it looks really good? Should I do it during the full moon or not full moon? You know, any other advice there?
I think the moon always looks better when, like, my favorite moon is when it's a waning crescent. So when it's kind of near to new moon, that's really good. And you always want to, the most interesting photos for me of the moon are when it's not full, because you get the crater detail. So in like the first quarter, that's when there's some nice detail on the moon.
Tell me about the award that you won and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so that was kind of really crazy because I never ever thought I'd get anywhere with it. It was quite amazing, really. And I entered my pictures and I was obsessing over this picture of Melotte 15 in the centre of the Heart Nebula that I could have asked for. I never in a million years would have thought that, some of the pictures in that competition, the standard is phenomenal. And
yeah, I've seen the photographs. They're amazing. So what kind of things are you shooting at right now?
It's a really faint supernova remnant called a Bell 85. And it is faint. It is really, really faint. And I'm doing like 10-minute exposures on it. So it's taken me a long time. It's the longest one I've done. I normally stick around 30 or 40 hours, which usually gets cut down a bit in post-processing.
Well, Hannah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I may reach out to some random astrophotography questions.
Thank you, no worries. Thank you. Bye.